First off, here is this month's original art giveaway. This is a matted artist trading card of a Maine Coon cat that I painted several years ago. Before we continue to the actual painting, here is a quick exercise. People often think in terms of an object's positive shape. You can imagine your brush touching the object, laying color down to fill in its outlines. In this case, the brush strokes are the petals. On a scrap piece of watercolor paper, draw some ovals with squiggly outlines. These will be your white flowers. With negative painting, you're painting around the object, tracing along the outside of its outline. The definition will be stronger if you use dark colors for the negative space. This technique is particularly helpful if you're saving whites, in this case the white petals. Now let's move on to painting two friends sitting on a garden bench. I've added a tiny touch of raw umber to all the paints in the background. The raw umber will help gray the colors a bit so that they recede more. You could use burnt sienna or ochre for the same effect. Here I'm negative painting around the edges of a tree that will be closer to the foreground. I'm painting a mix of opera pink and raw umber for the building. The tree color is still wet, so the colors mix softly along their edges. After you let the background dry completely, you can brush a thin wash of green over the edges without worrying about disturbing the background colors. I want the darkest color next to the focus of the painting, the two women. I like the difference in textures between the trees and the long grasses around the garden bench. Even though I'm using the same pigments, I use different strokes for different foliage. These grasses are closer to the foreground, so I'm leaving areas of white here and there. I'm just indicating the flowers here. I'm not even looking at the reference photo for this area. Opera pink painted wet and wet into the green gold looks like a patch of dry grass. At this point, I'm still negative painting around the main focus of the painting, which is the two women on the garden bench. The bench's armrest blocks the full view of the bench's back. When it comes time to paint between the slats of the bench, make sure to line up the top and bottom halves. By now the background trees and building are dry. I still want to avoid hard edges, so I paint in very thin washes of color. Here I'm painting thin green lines under the poppy heads for the stalks. At this point, the two women and the bench are well defined by the negative painting I did around them. Now it's time to paint them in. You may notice that some areas of this painting have very little color mixing. That's in part because I was trying to simplify this tutorial, but it also helps make the colors of this garden painting brighter.